Good day. The ICAT Virtual Career Connections is pleased to present this career enhancement tool for your advancement. The topic of this session is Career Success Stories featuring Delivering More Than Requested by Mark Lucano. We appreciate Mark Lucano for generously sharing his career stories for the benefit of many. Who is ICAP Professional Services and who is ICAP Virtual Career Connections? ICAP Professional Services is a social enterprise with the purpose of creating jobs in our community by enhancing employability and strengthening job creators. For more information about ICAP, please visit our website at www.icap.net. Let's give you a bird's eye view of the full range of ICAP programs. ICAP is the home of virtual career connections, enhancing employability anytime, anywhere. Community career promoter, promoting you to the next level. International circle, building your proficiency in English, technology, and social enterprise. Creative genius apprenticeship, elevating you to lead innovation. For more information about these programs, please visit www.icat.net and look for a special link for each program. In Career Success Stories, our guests address the following career questions. Question number 1. What are the best insightful career tips that you received from others? Question number 2. What are career lessons that you learned the hard way? Question number 3. What are your career journey stages or milestones? Question number 4. What actions in the past led you to secure jobs? In other words, what did you do right to secure jobs in the past? Question number 5. What actions led you or contributed to your advancements, promotions, and pay raises? Question number 6. What advice would you give to your younger version? Question number 7. What are career-related questions for which you are still seeking answers? Enjoy the presentation.
Today's career success story. Today's success story is Mark Lucano. Mark Lucano is a retired United States Air Force senior non-commissioned officer. During his 26 years with the United States Air Force, Mark served in various capacities and assignments that included the Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Base, the Pentagon, and a tour of duty at Royal Air Force in Upper Heyford, England. As a senior non-commissioned officer, Mark also worked with the USAF Recruiting Service, where he counseled new recruits undergoing Air Force basic military training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. While counseling recruits, Mark discovered his passion for coaching and mentoring. And this passion led Mark to pursue a Bachelor's of Science degree in Organizational Management and a Master of Science degree in Organizational Leadership, both from Nyack College in New York. Mark is currently a federal employee in Bethesda, Maryland, where he serves as an ethics office official, specializing in conflict of interest applications. He's looking to help others grow in their professional careers, and he's had the opportunity to mentor individuals at his federal agency. To further pursue his passion in coaching and mentoring, he plans to devote his efforts to on a full-time basis once he retires from federal service. And as a native Texan, he currently resides in Northern Virginia with his wife, Liz. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Jody. Welcome, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yes, and thank you also for your service to our country.
Thank you.
Yes. So let's get right into it. We're so excited to hear just all about your background and all that you've learned from your time of service. So let's start with this question. Tell us, what are the best insightful career tips that you've received from others? We know that you're in a space where you're mentoring and you're coaching now, but what was the best career tips that you received as you were mentored and coached?
I would say one of the best career tips that I received was when I was still in the military and I was working on a project, and it was a project that I was very passionate about. And when the day came for me to update my supervisor, who was a military officer at the time, I remember sitting across his desk and just going on. In my excitement, I was just telling him, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then after this, we'll do this, we'll do that. And after a few seconds, what seemed a bit longer than that, actually, my supervisor said, whoa. And he laughed at me, and I was just sitting there, and it was what he said that resonates to me to this day. And it was this. He said, Sergeant Lucano, you are like a workhorse that has to be told, whoa.
Wow.
It's okay. And he followed that by saying, but it's okay. I would much rather tell you whoa than giddy up. And what I took away from that moment, it was a couple of things. The first thing, it made me realize that when I'm very passionate about something, all these ideas just come out, and I'm just pumping them and pumping them and pumping them. On top of that, to be told, whoa, to me, that's a good thing, because I'm giving so much information and I'm giving so many options that it's like, slow down. And it's, in my mind, it's better to be told to slow down than to giddy up. Then, where are you going with this? What's on your plate? And obviously, for me to get to that point, I really have to be passionate about what I'm doing. And so that to me was one of the biggest ones. Very simple but profound because of the way it was said and the environment that I was in and the excitement of working on this project. And to this day, I sometimes make people nervous, and when I'm working on a project with them, and I go back and tell them, don't worry, I won't do anything without you knowing about it, because I was working on a committee. I'm working on this committee rather, and this individual was getting a little bit nervous because I was coming up again with all these ideas and suggestions. And I said, don't worry, I won't send out any emails or anything without going to you first. And it was, again, because I caught myself. I had to say, whoa, maybe you're going too fast for others and they don't really understand what you're thinking. And so that to me was one of the bigger ones out of my entire military career and probably federal career as well.
Well, that's wonderful. So it's a special energy that you bring to the projects that you're passionate about.
Correct. When I'm really passionate about something, I grab a hold of it and I just run with it, because I just find it so inspiring, so engaging, that it just does something to me. And obviously I've gotten a lot of other career tips throughout my career, but a lot of them I also get through books, reading biographies, spiritual books, books on philosophy, you name it. I'm an avid reader. And so I always pick up a lot of bits of information that I bring onto my career. And for example, when I was reading Beethoven's biography, what inspired me about him was not so much because of his gift of music, but in how he said that even though he was tone deaf when he wrote the Ninth Symphony, he could hear the music in his mind, and he committed that to paper. And I take that as a career tip, because I says, what's in my mind that I need to put down to paper that no one else can listen to except for me. And then the only way they're going to listen to what I have to say is to commit it to writing. And so those are the kinds of things and where I pick up career tips as well.
Okay. So what would you say to someone who may be listening now that isn't as passionate about the work that they are doing? What would you say to encourage them or help them to find a way to become passionate about their work?
I've discovered that a job is a job. And sometimes we have to go outside of our job to find our passion. In other words, I've learned not to limit my passion to where I find myself, because I've decided that, hey, if this place doesn't want it, somebody does. And so, yes, we need to have our jobs. We need to focus on our careers, but at the same time, sometimes our passions don't align with what we're doing for a living to earn our paycheck. And that's where we have to find the avenue in which to do that. And when you have the passion to do something, you're just going to have the energy, even if it's something that you do after your duty hours, because you're just excited about it. So I would encourage the listeners to don't shortchange yourself, and if you're not able to do it in your career, find a way to do it. Eventually, it'll creep into what you're doing in one form over another. That's what I've discovered in my years in the military and as a federal employee, that sometimes I have to step out of my career itself and pursue a passion while still holding on to my career. And at the same time, they do complement one another in some way or another.
Right. So, and I'd like to actually pose this question both to you, Mark, and to our audience to post in the chat. The question is, what is one thing, an activity or something that you're involved in outside of your work that you would say that stirs your passion? What is something that you do outside of work that really, really energizes you? And audience, we want to hear from you as well. What's something outside of your work that keeps you energized?
For me, it's teaching at my church. I love to teach, and
That's
anything I can teach. If it's, I'm a self-learned historian. If I could find a platform to teach history, I would do that. And in a way, I try to incorporate that into my biblical teachings. And I always look for ways to incorporate all the knowledge that I've learned over the years into the message that I want to send out, to give it more relevance, to make it more impactful and more encouraging, and to show people that when we read things, that there's a way that we can incorporate this into our lives and teach others about it, while at the same time encouraging them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I actually can relate. I too enjoy just teaching the things that I learn. And apparently in the chat, Max we're all in good company. Max as well. He teaches at his church. Gabe shared that going outdoors gives him passion outside of his job. So yes, it's so great to have either a creative outlet or something that allows you to contribute outside of your day-to-day work to keep you
Most
energized.
definitely.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mark. So tell us a little bit more about your career journey. What's some of the major milestones along the way?
Well, one of the major milestones has already come to pass, and that was to retire from the United States Air Force after 26 years. Wow. To me, that was a big milestone. And what's really interesting, that there was about a 3 or 4 year gap into which the grade that I retired in, which was Master Sergeant, was extended to 26 years. Before that, the maximum amount of years was 24. So after about a 3 or 4 year period that they extended it to 26 years, it went back down to 24. So I really feel fortunate to have been in that window where I was allowed to do 26 years instead of 24. Not only did it impact my pension, but it allowed me to serve longer. And it was just an incredible journey. The assignments I had along the way, especially towards the end, and my final assignment was here at the Pentagon. And it's really interesting, because had it not been for the 26-year extension, I would not have been eligible to take the assignment at the Pentagon, which means we probably wouldn't be having this discussion, because a lot of things have happened since I came to the Pentagon, and I'm still here. And so it's really interesting how things worked out. And when I look back in my life and I see how things just happen, it's like, it's really interesting because it led to other things along the way that we don't necessarily think about at the time.
Right.
So that was to me a milestone.
Yes, hindsight definitely is 2020. And it is so wonderful to be able to look back and see, you know, how everything worked together.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow, thank you for sharing that. So tell us also about, you know, it sounds as though that was a shift from the extension to the 26 years that really positively impacted you in many ways.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. It gave me the opportunity to work on assignments that I normally wouldn't have ever had. And what's really interesting is I never had a desire to come up to the East Coast. I purposely stayed away from this area, and look how it worked out. This is my final assignment. I had the opportunity to go back to Texas when I retired in 2009, but here I am in Springfield. I've bought my home, and I've had a successful career at the federal agency that I'm currently at. So it's funny how things work out, and especially for those you're not really looking forward to. And sometimes those are the ones that really turn out to be the milestones and the life changers. And at least it has in my case.
Wow, that's awesome. And I'm sure along the way you've met all sorts of interesting characters.
Yes, I did. One of the most interesting, actually a few people I've had the opportunity to meet since I've been up here, of course, along the way, but more up here because the environment we find ourselves in was, one of my last assignments was to work on this presidential commission in which Robert Dole and Donna Shalala were co-chairs for this commission having to do with wounded warriors. Robert Dole ran for president at one time, and he was also a well-respected senator, I believe, from the state of Kansas. And it was an honor to meet him and hear his story about when he got wounded during World War II, and how this Wounded Warrior Project was such a passion of his, and how he shared how it was for him. And what really moved him was when he went to Walter Reed Medical Center and saw the conditions that the enlisted people were facing as wounded warriors. He changed all that. And that really inspired me because, again, it goes back to passion, because when you're passionate about something, you forget about yourself, you forget about your status, and you start looking how you can help others who need help, whether it's a wounded warrior, whether it's a fellow employee who's just struggling in their career or trying to get started. Those of us who have been there and have experienced life in one form or another, I believe to me, it's inspirational to have the opportunity to help those move up the career path as well. So that was one of my interesting individuals that I met, and a few others.
Sure. Well, how long ago was that where you had the opportunity to meet Robert Dole?
I think this was in 2007, in April of 2007. I think I was on the commission for about 6 or 7 months. So it was a good thing. I actually got to celebrate one of his birthdays. We had birthday cake for him, and
wow,
it was really awesome. And I have one of his books that he signed for me. I have a couple. One of my first selfies was with him. So it's really cool. Yeah, it was really interesting.
So when exactly what age were you when you started your military career?
I came in later in life. I was 22. I almost.
Wow.
I'm sorry?
Oh, 22 would be considered later in life? That sounds pretty young to me.
Well, I was thinking about coming in at 18, right after high school, but
Oh,
I knew I wasn't disciplined enough, so I was
okay.
smart enough not to come in.
So think back to your 22-year-old self, just getting started in the military. What advice would you give to him?
What advice, if I was, okay, if, going back to when I was 22 years old, what advice would I give to him?
Mhm.
Number one, listen to those who have been there. Listen to the wisdom of those who have traveled the journey, and realize and understand that I don't have the answers to life. Because at 22, there's not, I mean, when I was 22, I thought I knew it all. But when I look back at 22, I knew nothing. Even at my age, I still have a lot to learn. But I would say listen to wisdom, seek out people who are willing and want to guide you because they see something in you and they want to draw it out from you, and not close that door because thinking that we have the answer to everything.
Wow, that's great advice. And, I'd like to encourage those of you who are tuning in live, what advice would you give to your younger self? If you're over the age of 22, what advice would you give to your 22-year-old self, just as Mark has? Because we can learn from, your lessons as well. And speaking of lessons, Mark, I'd like to ask this. What career lessons have you learned the hard way?
That's an interesting one. A few years ago, in one of my positions as a federal employee, I was working with a supervisor who was, as you know, I'm retired enlisted. My supervisor at the time was a retired officer. And and I can't recall when I started thinking this way, but I started feeling and thinking, I had convinced myself rather that my supervisor wanted to run the office as if we were still in the military. Keep in mind, after doing 26 years in the service, it's kind of hard to let go of things. Not that I was holding on to anything, but there was this officer enlisted uh, line, fine line that I had to bear for 26 years. And after I retired, I said, I want to be able to do things, a little bit more freely, of course, within reason and discipline, of course. And for some reason, I just felt that my supervisor was just holding me back and that he was determined to play that officer enlisted role where everything he said goes. And when I reflect on that time span, it obviously affected my career path in the sense that my performance ratings, my job performance, I had pretty much created a toxic environment without realizing it. So when I look back at that, I I I realized that it was something that I had created in my own mind. And that for whatever reason, I just started feeling that way. And it wasn't true at all. It was just something that I had convinced myself that that was what was happening. And the lesson that I learned from that, not only from my personal life, but from my career as well, is that the image that I formulate in my mind is the environment I'm going to make myself to be in. And having said that, this is why I always try to exude a positive attitude, because that positive attitude creates a positive environment. And what had happened was, in my previous position where I felt that everything was just the way I imagined it to me, there was nothing my supervisor could say to me that I felt was good, because I already had established this negative mindset. So now I've reversed that, where I'm looking for the good in people, and and I just want to And that's what I look for, because I want to make sure that I find myself in a positive environment and that I make it a positive environment for other people as well. So that was one of the hardest things I learned. Interestingly enough, late in my career, that I learned the hard way. And I say the hard way because, again, it affected my job performance and my ratings. And the good thing is, having learned from that and taken responsibility for my own actions, I rebounded and I'm doing very successful now. In fact, the following year, I got the max rating that a person could get in the federal service. So that was coming off of a marginal rating. So again, that had to do with my determination to accept responsibility and to make the best of it in spite of the negative environment that I had created for myself.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Mark. You spoke of how, you went from probably some of the worst ratings that you had to the best. What actions would you say led or contributed to that advancement?
Accepting responsibility and being honest with yourself, and just take a hard look at oneself and say, is this something that I created, or was this something very real? And you'll know. In my case, it was something that I had created. And so I really didn't have an option to myself other than say, Mark, wipe yourself off and get going. You did this, come out of it. And I did. And I went in there and I gave it, went to my new job, and I was just determined to make things better. I never said anything about my previous position, because to me, the worst thing any individual can do is to go into a new job and speak negatively of their previous position if they had a negative experience, because that automatically tells the new leadership, if they spoke about them, they're going to speak about us. So I remind those that I mentor to be very careful that you don't go repeating things that you should not be repeating, because it's your credibility on the line.
And credibility is so important.
Exactly.
So, you spoke of, if, you're going from a previous job to a new job, what actions in your job history, in your career path, led you to secure new jobs?
That one, I'm going to speak more on my federal career, because this was something that I learned in my military career. And that was, in my military career, I really didn't have a choice when I was moved around. When the assignment came, excuse me, I either went or had to exercise my other options. Having said that, when I started at my current federal agency back in 2009, in my current federal agency, we have 27 institutes. When I landed my current job in January of 2017, that was my 5th institute. And so what I appreciated in the military was I didn't allow myself to get too comfortable to be in one spot. I realized and learned that in order to get to where you want to go, sometimes that requires coming out of our comfort zone. And if you're looking for that higher pay grade or that higher position, then you do need to come out of a comfort zone. And no matter how comfortable it is, so long as you're not going into a toxic environment and or anything like that, I think a person needs to move around. It's good for a person to move around because it stretches you, it gets you out of a comfort zone. You meet different people, new opportunities. You just never know the windows of opportunities that can be open at a new environment. But most importantly, for me at least, what's the difference that I can make, not only for the organizational, but for the people I work with? How can I make a difference in their lives? So I look at the bigger picture. A job is a job, but I look at it deeper. How can I influence people in a positive way? And that's where I look for mentorship opportunities to guide them in their career paths and to help them in any way I can.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And speaking of mentorship opportunities, what are the types of people that you want to coach, that you want to mentor? Who are you looking to extend that to, and why?
I like to keep a balance. There are those that want career mentoring, and I love doing that. And then there are those who need who want personal development mentoring, and they really both go hand in hand. When I do personal development coaching, mentoring, it carries over into their professional life because they begin to understand more of themselves. They begin to understand situations in a more logical manner other than just a conflict per se. They begin to understand that, for instance, organizational conflict, that's really a good thing if it's done constructively, because it really shows where people are, and it brings a level of respect. Whereas you don't have that kind of understanding, you just see it as, they're just out to get me kind of thing. But I truly enjoy what I do because I never really had any mentors in the sense of the word. I never really had anyone take me under their wing. But I'm okay with that because I've learned through observation and through reading, and I just feel like I want to give back to people and give them an opportunity to grow in areas where they may not see their strengths in them. And so I look for people who are hungry to grow for themselves.
And Mark, so you mentioned that you didn't really have a formalized mentorship relationship as a mentee, but you learned a lot from books and things like that. What is a book that you've read recently that you would say has mentored you in a way?
I would say I just recently read a book from Colin Powell. He wrote it a few years ago, and what I liked about his book was that he was very honest about himself. He says, I do get carried away sometimes with myself. I do yell at my staff and so on and so forth. But then at the same time, I encourage them, and he goes on to say how he listened to people, even though he was the chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff in the military, which is the highest military position a person can hold in the military, and have so much responsibility. Even though he was in that role or as the Secretary of State, he still was humble enough to listen to those beneath him, and how he would go out of his way to go and talk to people that people normally don't speak to, and like the car attendants or people, cleaning the hallways. And because he realizes that everyone has something to say. And I really like that, especially coming from such a high profile man, that he's humble enough to realize that it's not all about him and about positions. I mean, there's a time and place for using your positional authority, but as a human being, you really want to connect with as many people as you can, because everyone has something good to say about something. Everyone has a nugget in them. And so those are the kinds of things that influence me.
That's so wonderful. And you said it's his autobiography?
No, it's really a book that he wrote on leadership.
Okay.
Yeah, he wrote it about 4 or 5 years ago. And so, but it's really a good book. That's one of many that I've read on leadership and self-development.
Okay, What's the title of the book, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't have it in front of me, but it deals with leadership. It just talks about leadership. I think it's the only book that he's ever written. It's if I'm not mistaken, that's his only book on that subject that I'm aware of.
Okay, so it should be pretty easy to find then.
Exactly.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. We do have a question from the chat. The question is, what are examples of truth to share with others and the truth we need to keep to ourselves?
Well, I'm sorry, what are examples of truth?
Truth to share with others and truth we need to keep to ourselves. So I guess instances where, you may have some information. When is it best to share, and when is it best to kind of hold your cards closer to the chest?
That one, I would say, depends on the situation and what it is that what's the information that needs to be shared. In other words, on a need to know basis, if I'm understanding it correctly. Obviously, there are some things that you just can't openly discuss with anyone because of its sensitivity, and then also at the same time, truth, what may be truth for someone may not be truth for another. So it's really the way I handle that. Going back to what I initially said, and that was, I have a need to know basis, and do I need to let them know what's going on? On a personal level, if it's something that has the potential to bring harm, then yes, there is some element of truth that needs to be said there.
What would you say? I'm a pretty avid reader, and you did mention Colin Powell's book. What are maybe a couple of other titles that we should be adding to our personal or professional development libraries?
Oh, there's so many out there. Some of them, to be honest with you, a lot of the insight I get is through my study of the Torah, and going back and looking at what the sages say about a lot of things. And that's where I get a lot of my source of wisdom. On top of that, there's just, it really depends on what it is that you want to read. And I know I'm not exactly answering your question, because to me, there's so much material out there that I can't really narrow it down. But I generally look for books that concentrate on self-development and leadership. But it starts with self-development, because I believe that if a person is to lead, if a person wants to make a difference in the lives of others, it starts with refining a character. And that's one of the hardest things to do, because it requires that we take a look at ourselves, and where we're honest with ourselves, and that we strive to change where we feel we need to change to become the better person that we want to become. So again, that would all depend, and that's what would drive, rather, to the books that you're looking for.
Max would like to know, what is your approach to mentoring someone?
Very good question. What is my approach to mentoring someone? Number one, if it's career, I generally, when I say I observe people, it's not like I'm watching them like a hawk, but I can usually pick up when someone is really wanting to learn just by the questions they ask, and just how they want to learn, and I see the drive in them. I generally, that's how I pick up a lot of the people I mentor, to be honest with you. And also, if I see someone who just by things they say, like if we're sitting around in a staff meeting, and they say, I just want to learn more about leadership. To me, that's a cue. And leadership is one of my strongest areas. And so I'll have a discussion with that person and say, hey, what is it about leadership that you want to learn? Is it team building? Is it this, or what specifically are you looking for? And their response will pretty much tell me what it is that they're looking for. And then I'll tell them, look, if you're really interested, we can start having these discussions and see how you can see how we can take this and have you grow in those areas that you're seeking to grow in. So that's my approach. It's more observation and by listening to what people are saying as far as where they want to grow.
That's wonderful. Lead with leadership.
Lead with leadership. That's exactly right. Lead by example.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. Thank you so much, Mark. And our final question is, what is your availability, your current availability to coach people?
I'm pretty much available right now. I stretch the sessions I have. I do them online as one on particular email because that's just more convenient for the person. And the reason I'm looking at full-time after I retire as a federal employee is because, number one, I'll have more time on my hands. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing is I not want to be charging people for this because I want whatever it is that I can offer to others, I want it to come from my heart and not be motivated by the dollar. Obviously, if people want to, bless me or whatever, that's fine. I have no qualms with that, but I want whatever it is I can impart, I want it coming straight from my heart and not because someone's paying me or I'm putting out a contract. Nothing wrong in that, but I want to do it from the heart, and I really have a passion to see people become the best that they can be.
We appreciate you for that. How can someone get in touch with you if they'd like to, pursue a coaching or mentoring relationship? What's the best way to get in contact?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn. I haven't really put anything out there for coaching, but it's Mark Lucano. I think I'm the only one out there on LinkedIn. Okay. You'll easily find me because you'll see my job there as an ethics official, and so you'll see the institute that I'm at the National Institutes of Health. So yeah, they can send me a private message through that if they would like to connect.
Yes, and so for those of you who'd like to connect with Mark, we encourage you to go ahead and just screenshot his name and photo here on the screen and, take some time to look him up on LinkedIn and get connected. And we just want to thank you. Thank you so much, Mark, for just sharing your wisdom, your insights from your 26 years with the military and even in your career with on the federal side of things. We so appreciate you and the wealth of knowledge that you've provided in this interview.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this. I look forward to some other opportunity.
Yes, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful.
Thank you for taking the time to watch these career success stories. More career resources are available at this channel. We greatly appreciate receiving your feedback in the comment section for our future improvement. Make it a fantastic day.